Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we have entered day 136 in the ongoing war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And today, we are hearing that the Ukrainian military has reached 1 million active duty personnel in its entire armed forces. Now, obviously, that is just not the ground forces of the Ukraine. The ground forces right now are reportedly roughly 700,000 personnel that are currently in service, and obviously you have other formations as well, such as the Special Operations Forces, the Air Mobile Forces, the naval forces and air forces and air defense forces as well, and one of the largest components is the Ukrainian National Guard, probably second only to the actual ground forces in terms of size. But we had talked about that at the early stages of the conflict, that we could see the Ukrainian military mushroom upwards to 500,000 and then eventually to 1 million personnel. And it appears that Ukraine has now fully mobilized in terms of hitting that 1 million personnel complement in terms of what they are looking at. And we are also hearing that there is a possible Ukrainian offensive on the horizon. There's talk that the Ukrainians could be launching an operation anywhere from Zaporizhia west all the way down to Kherson. And it's also being advised, coming out of the Ukrainian Ministry of Information. They are informing individuals who are in the so-called occupation zone, such as the city of Kherson, to try and find a way out of these areas. And that could possibly mean that the city, Kherson, is going to come under, quite possibly, Ukrainian heavy artillery attack. Now, again, is this propaganda? Is this a way, an attempt by the Ukrainian government to draw Russian forces from the eastern areas of operation and shore up more defenses for Russian forces in the southwest of the military zone? I would have to say that if you kind of look at the map and just where the Ukrainians could possibly attack, it does make sense. If you look at Kherson, I'll go to the tactical map here, and we'll zoom in. And this kind of gives you a better idea of the situation on the ground. Obviously, the Ukrainians would need to move additional forces into the area if they were looking at launching a large-scale multi-brigade offensive on the western bank of the Dnieper River. They would also look to strike bridges over the Dnieper River as well to disallow Russian forces from crossing over and reinforcing these areas. Now, again, these areas are relatively flat, open spaces, ideal for maneuver warfare. And given just anecdotal reports of the situation on the ground with Ukrainian forces in terms of lack of certain supplies and some of the issues centered around the training of some of the territorial units, it doesn't seem like they would have that capability to launch such a large-scale offensive, especially if their intent is to push Russian forces out of Kherson and seize control of the city. Again, it may just be positioning statements designed to try and get Russian forces to redeploy from the hotly contested and ongoing Russian offensive towards Sloviansk and Bakhmut and Kramatorsk. That operation continues. We heard reports that the Russians may take a operational pause. Obviously, the tempo of operations may have somewhat decreased, but in terms of the overall intensity of Russian artillery attacks on Ukrainian front lines in the eastern Donbass, we've not really seen that decrease very significantly. And we continue to receive reports of multiple Russian attacks and advances towards Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Bakhmut as the conflict continues. We're also hearing reports, and I'm going to switch over to the deep state map here and kind of zoom out, that the Russians are amassing additional reserve forces from all across the Russian Federation. This is coming out of the British intel services. They are claiming that the Russians appear to be accumulating reserve forces in the theater of operations, in which they believe is a prelude to a possible large-scale renewed Russian offensive. Now, is it in the eastern zone? Are these forces designed to stop any sort of possible Ukrainian counteroffensive coming from Mykolaiv down to Kherson? Very difficult to say at this point. But be that as it may, it does appear that as we heard about these so-called covert mobilization underway by Russian forces, obviously it's happening at a regional level. We have not seen the Russian government come out, declare war, and announce full mobilization yet. Now, with that being said, as we hear about the possibility of a Ukrainian offensive, as we also hear about the possible attack on the Kerch Strait Bridge by Ukrainian forces, I would say it becomes more and more likely, if that were to occur, if we see that sort of what the Russians would perceive as a escalation. I mean, I think it's a valid military target for the Ukrainians. Obviously, the Russians are hitting targets deep in the Ukraine, and the Ukrainians obviously would have the ability and the right to attack targets deep inside of Russia, or sensitive targets such as the Kerch Strait Bridge. So again, it's not something that would be outside of the norms of what we've seen in the current conflict. But how do the Russians perceive it, and what weapon systems are utilized in attacking the Kerch Strait Bridge? Do we start to see the deployment of the ATACMs? I doubt that would be officially announced. I would imagine both Ukraine and the United States would utilize plausible deniability and claiming it could have been a Ukrainian system that has launched some of these long-range attacks upon Russian targets, while at the same time utilizing the ATACM system on the HIMARS, the precision-guided ballistic missile that the HIMARS is capable of firing. Again, I would not be surprised if we've already seen it used in areas such as Berdyansk, on the targeting of Russia's amphibious warfare vessels that were docked at that locale. And we're still trying to ascertain what system was used on those strikes. We've heard anything from drones to quite possibly some sort of more precision-guided ballistic missile or an upgraded Tocha that the Ukrainians are using. And again, the Ukrainians have the capability to deploy these systems, these dated Russian systems, Soviet systems, and they have the ability to upgrade some of these systems and make them more precise with some of the Western technology that they have access to. But that pretty much does it for today in terms of kind of what we're looking at. Again, both sides appear to be positioning themselves for additional offensive operations. I mean, obviously, the Ukrainians are talking about large-scale counteroffensives. We haven't seen it yet. I would be surprised if we did see the type of operation that would be needed to push Russian forces out of Kherson. I feel that's doubtful at this point. And then at the same time, we're continuing to see the Russians mobilize and push forwards into the conflict zone in preparations for quite possibly wider offensive operations as well. And one final thing, just real quick before we part ways, the G20 summit. Something happened. And I'm not sure exactly, in all likelihood, it may have been behind the scenes, but something pissed the Russians off. And I don't know, again, it may be some of the, I mean, obviously you can do your own due diligence and kind of see what is being reported, but I have a hunch something else may have occurred that has of not yet has been reported. And then obviously we have good old Senator Lindsey Graham talking about sending the ATACMS to Ukraine, and he's such a good decision maker, isn't he? What do they call him down there in the Carolinas? What's his nickname? I'm sure someone will comment in the comment section, but nah, not really a big fan. Anyway, but we'll keep an eye on the situation, report, and we'll have more very, very soon. Thanks for joining us.